Hey guys, welcome back. I'm doing a quick dev video where I just wanted to kind of showcase what I've been working on because I just actually made a huge step in the whole process of getting my auto heal, and essentially it's a delta patcher without the source code. So for any of you that are aware of how a delta patcher works, what I've been trying to do is essentially take and write a system robust enough to be able to bring all current mods in the Nexus into a working system that allows that code to live for the rest of its life as long as the original data that it was manipulating exists. So if certain values disappear from the code, you're gonna have to fix your mod. But for all of you that have just been, bored with having to update your code after every update, I have so much content that I want to write for this game. I'm just tired of having to go through the process of updating. But also, I want to send that content to the new game. I want to send it to the Beast. I want to send it back to Dying Light 1. I want to do more with my time than just have to update it over and over and over again. So what I've done is created first this huge system that basically stores all of the data for all the game scripts. So all the Dead Island scripts, all the Dying Light scripts, they're all now housed inside of my script config database. And then from there, I started going through and saying like, okay, can I actually write the data? So first it was an assessment of, what does this data look like? So the original script, let me pull up the original. So let's go in here. Let me grab, I should have had this staged, I apologize. So if we go into this version of the original script and we'll pull up for an example script, we'll do the perception presets, which basically these are all the sensors that the AI uses when moving around the world. So if you wanted to make a mod that just literally changes a couple of these values and you want to release it on the Nexus and never touch it again. Well, if you released it on the Nexus, with the new updates in the future, the goal is to put out a launcher for the community that will service all of the mods. So you can use the tool built into it to update your mod and then re-release onto the Nexus. So you don't actually have to do anything to your work. It auto patches everything for you, and then you can publish your updated version. If you want to join the community, you can actually browse the different mods that people have created and actually just merge them, install them, service them there. And I'm hoping more mod creators will actually come to the platform and actually start making stuff on the actual tool. That would be great. So say we have this one script and we want to go in here and change a couple of values. So I have the original here. I have my modified test down here. So let me bring that up and let me show you what I've done. So essentially, this is kind of my test bed that I've been doing. As the different updates come out, what will happen is that data will all of a sudden be, in different places. When you're doing something like a win merge change, so if we pull up win merge really quick, what it does is it checks on a byte line what the comparison is. So it tries to find differences between the byte lines. So if we compare against our presets, against I Am Legion's preset and the vanilla, you'll see if we scroll down here, I've injected two sensors. So we have two sensors added to the group infected. So if I wanted to try to make sure that that lived on for forever and I didn't have to actually update this, what we can do is as a proof of concept, we'll go back to my modified file that I've been using to test earlier, and we'll add these two sensors. So we'll add these two sensors to it. And then if you notice between the original and this new one, what I've done is also changed the order of these preset, the perception presets, so that you can kind of see that it doesn't actually care about the lines. What I've done is I've actually gotten the code to the point where it can actually read the data well enough that it understands the actual data itself, so that it's not actually just doing line changes. It's not writing a script that says, every single line has changed to this point and it's been replaced by this. What it's doing is actually reading the data and saying these values have changed and this is how they've changed. It took a long time to get to this point, but what the result here is when you output, this is an example of a mod. So if we go in here to our test folder, what we'll get is we'll get a mod summary. So this is for the game. So which game is for Dying Light 2? What's the name of the mod? This one's called test. Number of modified scripts. So this is 1. And then it also has the ability to look for custom scripts. So in the case of other mod creatives that, they don't modify the original scripts in the game, they figured out how to do the import cycles. This will basically also detect if they have custom scripts that have been added to the files, so that what it can do is it can actually just go ahead and copy that into your mod bundle, so that your mod bundle also contains, so in this folder where it says test, this would also have a folder called custom scripts. And so when I run the code, it will deploy all the custom scripts, but it will also update all the files so that those import values are also there. So instead of having, for example, where if someone's using the import structure, you have to have the entire vanilla script, and then at the top where you're importing the script into that so that it properly loads. What this does is eliminates the need to have this big bloated original version of that script sitting in your files, because as soon as an update comes out, that file is no longer valid. I mean, it's containing outdated data. That's a jeopardy to the game's structure, to the save games, to everything. And so what this does is it says, actually, we want to add one line to that script that says import this file, and then it copies that file over. Now with the custom scripts, not to get off on a side note, just for the custom scripts, that's going to be a challenge, because if you use the custom scripts, those will eventually become outdated as well. So any values that you've written into a custom script, if they've removed certain values, those scripts will eventually become outdated, probably on certain scripts. But anyway, let's get back to the test. So it creates a little summary for me, and then in the script changes, it actually shows this is what we're changing. So when we run through the code, it will actually go and on a line-by-line basis, it will compare across reading the data properly, and it will basically determine whether or not it's been removed, modified, or added. And then it knows well enough whether how many sensors, so in this example, how many sensors were in the original, did any of the naming change for any of the specific values down to a sensor. And the best part of this is that once you do this in a well-structured code base, it can apply universally to all 6 games. So it's not just one game that this is being done for. This is going to apply to eventually all 7 games once the beast comes out. So the goal here is, let's add in these 2 new sensors and let's see what happens when we run the changes. So I'm going to go back over to my tool here, and I'm going to go into my modification creator tool. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that Dying Light 2 is loaded. So this is pulling the actual data from the actual game. And then I'm going to select my modified directory. So this is going to be my folder where my mod is. So I can go to my modified test folder, and inside that modified test folder is this one script. So if we back up to modified test, you can see here that it's this one script. And the cool part is that this isn't even in the AI folder where it should be. This is just, out in the main folder. So we're then gonna say, select output directory. We'll go back and we'll put it in the same place as test. And then let's give it the name. It's gonna be test. And let's say compare and generate. And so what it's gonna do is it's gonna load in the data files from Dying Light 2. It's gonna read through everything and make sure it understands the original code. And then it's gonna load in the modified one, and it's gonna make sure it understands the code. And then it's gonna do a comparison between those files. And the result here should be, if we go back to our text reader, is that we should have this new added sensor here as well. So we have the threatening and we have the bodies as well. So you can see here it's added those additional sensors, and so that's now in the data. So we now have, minus the JSON formatting, we now have a very simple file that contains a lot of changes for this one script. And so then what we do is, as you can see with my tool over here on the right panel, essentially this is all the data. So this is my script config. It basically knows everything it can know about the actual script itself and how that data is actually broken down and how it understands it. Does it have lined out comments? Is it a subcontainer? Does it end with a, semicolon? All that data is then being stored in these files, to where when this tool is released, the parts contents will essentially just be empty. I'm just using these now for testing to make sure that all the data is being read correctly. So let's say that we want to create a script from the original data. So what we'll do is we'll hit create script from script config data. And what that'll do is it'll actually generate the script in my, if we go over here to my generated data, and we go to that AI folder, it's generating this script. So if we go back to my Word editor, or my text editor rather, we'll drag this in. And so this is the original script. So if we go to the one that's extracted, so this is from the actual game files, this is the one that's now generated by the engine. Essentially just remove that comment at the top. It's able to read and understand all of the data structures well enough that it's able to generate a one-to-one match to the original. And when I'm running the file, you can actually see in the actual percent match, it's actually doing a script validation where it's actually going through and checking the original script, and then it's checking the new script, and it's giving me a percent match to tell me how close did it get. Sometimes with the different, comments and all, basically I'm removing the comments now. That's helping with a lot of that. There's an order to some of the code. So some of the code that they have in the base game is clearly not generated. It's clearly modified over a long period of time. And so when this is writing some of those scripts, you'll get back like a percentage match of like 28%. And you'll start to crawl through and you'll be like, no, actually it contains all the appropriate data. The difference is that it's printed in an orderly generated form. And so that's been kind of challenge going through all these files and basically saying like, is my code flexible enough to print all of this? And so far it is. It does take kind of an eye-to-eye match. Now, what this next step is like, okay, so yeah, we can write the original file. So what I've written today is the ability to add in the modified data. So when we hit this create modified script from the script config data, it's first going to ask for a modification folder. So in this case, I could create a mod or a modification anywhere. And what that consists of is the summary here, the actual results, and it's this. So it's going to look for the mod summary JSON, and then it's going to look for the script changes JSON. And once this is clicked, so we say select folder, it's going to go through and it's going to do that validation check. And you can see when we wrote that first one, I got 100% match. But then when I wrote this one, now all of a sudden we're getting some differences. And so it's letting me know like, hey, this is actually a 47% match because it no longer contains the exact data structures that were in there previously. But check this out. So this is the new printed version of the script. If you look through here, you can see that the infected now contains this threatening and the bodies sensor. You can see that there are these spelling errors that I've added deliberately to the code. So if we go back to the original, this is the original file. Let me blow this up so you guys can actually, hopefully you guys can see this okay. But basically what I did is in the modified version that's in my little modified file here, which is this one, I went through and just added some like typos and I added some little things here and there to kind of see if it catches them. And then when we go back to the now printed version, so this is in our generated data, you'll notice that it reversed the order of the preset, the perception preset human and infected, because that's based on the original. So it's using the original order. So my modified file, it doesn't matter any of the structure that was in there at that time, which this is exciting because what this means is that if someone created a really cool mod that they really enjoyed back for like the first version of the game, and data has changed since then a lot, the scripts have changed. What this means is that there's the potential that you could load in your old mod and actually run it through the code and see if it gets those changes and is able to then convert it to a working mod in the modern version of the game. So you don't have to worry about going through and actually figuring out all the structures and everything that changed. Let the code work for you to make those changes. So from here, the next step for this we'll be going through and trying to do a larger amount of data. So I haven't actually, I just finished with the code for loading this in. So we'll do a raw test and we'll just kind of see where we're at. If you guys bear with me, what we'll do is we'll go to our modification creator, double check that Dying Light is loaded. I have that set up to where all my editor tools don't always reload once I load back in, because then you get the overhead of all your tools reloading every time you select the engine. So let's go to I Am Legion and we'll go to one of the modules that I created. So I haven't like I said, bear with me because I haven't tested this. So let's use volatiles be gone. So this actually uses, we open this up. It has the spawn changes, and then it has the actual preset pools, and then it has a custom script. So it has a custom script in here. Let's see how it does. So if we go in here and select volatiles be gone, select folder. Okay, one of my changes there to the interface messed that up, but let's see here. Let's go down to mod test, results, and let's say volleys be gone. Select this folder, call it volleys be gone, and we'll say compare and generate. I am hoping to increase the speed on this. Sometimes it does take a second to run through the comparison. I mean, you saw it just went through. So it's kind of it's down to that, like, you should only ever have to run this once. So you can see here, the result of this is that we got our custom script. So it put the custom scripts in the scripts folder. Under mod summary, it did not see the changes on the AI preset pools, which is interesting because that does modify several lines. So I'm going to have to see why it didn't identify those specific changes. If we go here under the dynamic spawning, you can see here that from the original, I wonder if this is actually, so it looks like based on what I'm seeing here with the params, this may actually be where it's not using the appropriate, let me go over to that script config really quick and let's see what it's got. So that's going to be the next kind of challenge here, is that I'm going to have to go through and rebuild all of I Am Legion. And a big part of that is by saying, like, okay, which specific files are being used, and make sure that the code is able to read and write those completely. So you can see here the percentage match right now is 0. I'm going to go ahead and hit run again. It looks like it updated some of the data there. So it could have been from one of the older runs, which is fine. So now it has some data in it. Let's go ahead and hit create script. You can see that it then got a 100% match. And so what we can now do is say create modified script, and we can actually go to volleys be gone and hit select. And now it got 52%. And we will go over to our generated data. and then we'll go to spawn. Okay, so this is the generated script. This is with the mod. So you can see here, it's injected some things. I noticed that it left that open. So there's some formatting things we're gonna have to do here to make sure that, you know, these double quotes are gonna mess things up. So that's something that has to get fixed. The params are interesting because params are something that I'm having to look at in general, because they're basically, instead of like the nested containers, unlike these where you end up with a single value and then the sensor, some of these params are under very basic structures, so there's not a lot to really glean onto here. There's pretty much just the values and then the injected, there's the, what I would call the identifier. So to be able to properly determine the changes, instead of having to do a comparison of the entire thing. So if I currently do it, it's going to basically look for any change on the inside of there. What the challenge with that is that it's basically not identifying a specific value, that it's looking for just a value change to a specific identifier. So ideally the identifier would be param day start time. So then it would look for a value that's very specific, so that if anybody changes that value, then at any time it can say, okay, this changed from 8, you know, to 2. Then it's like, okay, I know exactly which parameter was modified. This is where. But if it grabs that entire thing, then it's basically going to always just kind of inject the entire param regardless of its location. So I'm still looking for some edge cases here, but it does look like the code was able to write into it for the most part. It just added some additional quotations here, but it does look like it was able to change those values. And so if we, you know, to show you guys basically, if we want to change this back to the original really quick, all I have to do is go here into my code again and say create script from script data, and what that does is generates the original. So this is the original version, and I can see here that it actually looks like it contains a few more additional lines than the modified one, which again, this is where, you know, this is what I'm trying to fight, is essentially values were added. I want the code to get all of those values and add them regardless. So I just want to inject small changes while also pulling in the new original version, so that it can be kind of rolling updates and inject that code. So let's hit create modified again. Yeah, it does look like it got rid of a line. Let me see if it actually has remove code in the changes. So if we go back to this and say modified, removed. So it's removing the spawn condition. Yeah, so I'm gonna have to make sure that there's some way, basically that's gonna be the challenge, is that we have to identify how to ensure that it doesn't revert the code back to the original code. So in this case, if I was a mod creator, I could simply remove any of the removed fields and keep the modified fields, and you'll see what that results in. So if we go back, we'll close this so you can kind of see when it generates. We'll say create script. Here's our original. And then if we create the modified version, we load that file back in. Oh, did it still get it? No, those are the new files. So what is it missing? Wish I could see if it's like a comment or something. Let me actually, anyway, this video is going to go a little bit long, just where I'm running through some testing so you guys can kind of see what I'm doing here. But essentially, let's create the modified again. It's the transition times. because there's multiple of them, shouldn't be a problem. Go to script changes, modified, before and after, false, false. Interesting. So it does look like it sees each one of those. So it's got to be something small in my code that it's basically seeing these. I added a value earlier that basically tries to make sure that it doesn't append a index to each one of these that's written. And I think I changed it to where it's probably now catching these as the same value. And so what it's doing is that it's trimming off these additional values and it's only printing the one. So little things to fix, little things to change here and there, but slowly but surely, I am gonna have to see why the AI preset pulls was not picked up. That's one last thing that I'll check while I got you guys on the horn. If we go to scripts, we go to AI preset pull. This file is massive, it's bloaty, it's, you know, let me make sure it's still got everything. I'll run the parser again to make sure it's got the latest and the greatest. This file's a nightmare. Basically, I've been able to get it up to 32% match. And it is able, you can use that file that's generated and plug it into the game data. Everything spawns, everything works, as far as I can tell, without literally crawling every single line. Let's see, create from script data. Let's just see what happens here. And then under mod summary. So it didn't actually get that one file at all, which is interesting. And so a couple of small things to still figure out. Here's the original script. So if we go into scripts, we go into here. So this is this little nightmare file. Basically, you have all these little comments thrown everywhere. A lot of the actual pulls themselves have been hand modified or something. I don't know what program is making these. I don't think it's a program. I think it's actually generated from something hand crafted, because you end up with all sorts of little things that just don't make a lot of sense. Like where the little edits or the little different value changes, the formatting, it's hard to figure out, you know, what exactly is going through and if it's done by hand or if this is done by something generating it. But my guess is that it's not generated. If it is generated, then it's generated by something that has hand edits. So when I actually generate this file, like I said, I get a 32% match. And if we go over here to our scripts and go to AI preset pull, basically what it does is it cleans out all the comments and keeps everything super. That's right, I still got to fix on my common template. I got to add it's going to go up here in a second because it's going to clearly get those lines as wrong. But my containers don't currently capture the enclosing parentheses. I made an update before. A lot of these things were hard-coded to where it would write those encapsulating parentheses around everything. And then I realized that basically there's so many edge cases that you basically just have to capture the original and use that as the guide for how the data needs to be formatted. So a couple of little things to fix, but basically I've set the code up to where when it generates the values, it uses it uses a standard for how it writes tags, for how it writes the presets, how it's nested, to try to keep this as clean as possible. Because one of the biggest things coming up for the mod is being able to not only generate these, but to be able to edit these based on a map, be able to edit these based on density settings, being able to throw some fun math into this for the weights. Really, so much could be done with these just you could make mods for days just off this one file. It just kind of comes down to, looks like I spotted, yeah, it's these placeholders. It just takes the code to be written to know how to modify and write into these now that the code is set up. So it's able to read and write all of this data. It's just not able to, it's just missing the part where I actually design the design system for it. So anyway, that's kind of the summary. So the good news is that I'm now actually able to write the modified data. I was writing the originals a couple weeks back. For whatever reason, this has been kind of a slog uphill of doing again the kind of the delta patcher, like how is all of the data summarized, and then what identifiers allow it to not be line based but identifier based, and then once I had that code kind of established, it's like, okay, so then how do I do this delta patcher hot swap system where instead of writing the original data and saving over any data, it's just literally loading in changes lists, and then it's able to then write that as a result. But the current goal here is to be able to go in here and let me actually, while I'm summarizing, run another one and just see if it's able to get all the other scripts, because one of the issues may be that for some reason it's now only getting a single script. It shouldn't be, and I can't imagine why it would do that, but let's just see here. So survival options had several scripts. So let's go in here and say survival options. Let's do our little output here. So if we go back to the desktop, okay. And we'll say compare and generate. Let's just see if that comes back with multiple scripts or if that comes back with a single script, because that could probably help me identify why those files aren't being spotted. So it's getting the custom scripts. That's not a custom script. Oh, the XML code's not supported yet. So XML is going to be considered custom until I get the XML set up in this system. So yeah, the next step is to be able to go and take larger mods, very larger, very much more fleshed out mod packs that you could find on the Nexus or wherever, and start to feed those into the system. You can see here that basically because the params, so you can see the issue I was referring to earlier, where because the code is not looking at specific ones, I say that, but it looks like it is. It's actually getting nice. Okay, it is actually. Previously, the issue would be is that it would basically turn the params into line changes because they only had the param to go off of. It does look like it's doing it based on a number still. So I'm going to have to go in there and figure out how with the param specifically to make this something like param like that, so that the code knows how to read the params, remove this value, and only get this value, but then when writing the data, if it is a param, take that value and inject it back in, kind of thing. Because this params 129, if you go in there and reverse the order on any of these, it's going to mess it up. So I want to make that line independent, so it's not doing it by a specific hard-coded number. But you can see here all the different params have all of their changes, and then it goes over to our next file. So it's actually got multiple scripts that are in here. And what that means is that we should be able to then take the player variables. So if we go over here to our code, let's go over to our parse data. We'll go into scripts, and then we'll go into player. and then variables. Let's make sure. So this is using the subscript. Let's run it again. It doesn't have a number here, so let's go ahead and say generate script. It gets a 100% and it locks it. So then if we say create modified script, so first we'll go ahead and load this up. So if we go into our resources, generated data, scripts, player, not that. And then, so here is the written script. Here's the original script made from all of the data. You can see if you've ever opened this file up before, there's no comments, there's no, there's none of the, gaps or anything. It is just literally all of the data, which would make this very easy to hook this up to a interface. And that's the goal here, is that super clean data all goes to an interface, makes it super easy to not only search for these values, but then also edit and modify these values and make new mods based on this data, because this one file is probably 90% of the mods that are currently on the Nexus, and is also one that if you had tools like these that you didn't have to worry about ever updating this file again, you could do all sorts of things. So let's see. Now we'll go back to our player variables. We'll say create modified script. So if we go back up here to the top, we'll say create modified script. We're in the survival folder. Let's go ahead and select it. Oh, I saw the changes pop up here. And there we go, but it's still doing that double bracket. So I do need to fix my params, but it printed everything in, and so all the changes were hopefully done. You can see that the percentage dropped down to 64% because of the modified version. And the nice thing here is, and the reason that it helps to just take the time to write the tools, is because at any point I can hit create script from the data, and it reverts that back to the original. But also the cool part is that for anybody that's used the mod config before, basically instead of having less information about, like, all the information that was made for the mod config previously had to be written by hand. And so what I was doing is when I wrote the mod config, I essentially used this file, all the comments, all of the data that was in there, that was all done manually. And so everything you saw, the reason that it said one value, but then it did another value in the game, is because after updates, values would change, and so all of that, even having to upkeep this file got to 2,700 lines of code, all custom. So all of this had to be re-injected every time, updated on the comments, all that stuff. With this new version, just what you were seeing there with the ability to switch between the modified version and the original, I don't even have to do that. I mean, all of the script changes for that mod are right here. So if we go back to our results, our survival, and then our script changes, the original value is right here, and then the modified value is right here. So being able to actually load 3 different mods that all affect player variables, and then say there's a conflict, you could not only see what the original value was, you could actually see what the values were for each mod, and just immediately say, like, oh, I think I'll choose this mod, or I'll choose this one. And so this will allow you to move much quicker, no longer using the injection. So previously with the mod config, it was injecting these values at runtime. That's no longer going to be the case. All of this will be hard written, using the latest information, the latest data. And so gone the way of the dinosaur of having to manually update these things. Huge step. It's still slowly working its way up. I'm still working on the overhaul to all of the code base for the original overhaul so that it uses the system. And then in the future, like I said, I've got so much content that I've had ideas about that I want to write. So for I Am Legion, we've got traveling merchants coming up. We've got mercenaries coming up. We've got several events. I've redone my spawn system, the custom spawn system that I did to make that more intuitive. And that is about to be an absolute game changer as far as making a diverse world, and something unique that each time you play it, it's got something different. That's what I'm moving towards, and I've also got the infected. So the Infinity Designer has gotten an update. So I'm working on the new infected and bringing back all that my diverse Z's pack, so that you guys can enjoy new infected inside the wastelands. But thank you guys so much for watching. You guys probably didn't hang out for 40 minutes, but thank you guys so much if you did. Look forward to getting this tool out to you guys, and look forward to talking to you guys next time. Have a good one.